Newsline with Faraz Shaukat Ali.
Good morning, I am Banduli Jayasakara. I am standing in for Faraz Shaukat Ali, who is taking a break today. Now we have good news for our viewers, because we have heard that the sports minister, Dayasri Jayasakara, is going with the Para-Olympic team. This is what happens in Sri Lanka. Now we have heard that there are 40 people have gone, 9 athletes, others are officials and coaches. Coaches are accepted, but not so many officials. And then why is the sports minister going with the Para-Olympic team? Now the Indian sports minister went, and there was a lot of controversy. The Olympic Committee told the Indian sports minister to keep off because his entourage was interfering with the Olympic Committee people and forcing themselves, and maybe our sports minister will join him. There's big controversy in India. I don't think the ministers should go with athletes or anything. The sports minister can get involved in policy and other things, but this is your Sri Lanka and my Sri Lanka, unfortunately. Today we have Mr. Rukshan Javardhana, who's the chairman of Wildlife and Nature Protection Society, who's joining us. He will talk to us on Vilpattu and other things. Good morning, Rukshan.
Actually, Honorary President.
Honorary President. Sorry about Honorary President. So, Rukshan, now I want to ask you that you had a press conference yesterday. You're talking of encroachment in Vilpattu. What's happening in Vilpattu?
Yeah. Actually, specifically, it's not an encroachment issue. It is an issue of a small shrine which has been converted over the years into a fair-sized church. And this church, Pallenkandal, is within Vilpattu National Park.
But I mean, I'll ask the control room to show the photographs about this. If you can show, then you can discuss. This is the church.
Okay. This
you can continue.
Yeah, this is a fairly new structure that you're seeing.
Yeah.
Earlier it was a very small structure. It was more a jungle shrine where a few people, mainly fisher folk, used to go and worship from this Putlam.
When was this built, Rukshan?
We are really not sure where the first structure was erected, but the national park is declared around this shrine. And when a national park is declared, everything within a national park, all activities have to be governed by the Fauna and Flora Protection Ordinance. The Fauna and Flora Protection Ordinance is very strict about what is allowed and what is not allowed within a national park. So the church or the shrine is within the national park.
It's built inside the national
Yes, it is. It is inside. It is at the basically it is a guest of the park and the wildlife department. So it is not possible for any shrine or any place of worship to act as if they own
the park.
They own that area, own the park,
but
expand.
Rukshan, I'm sure they got permission to build it, or who gave permission?
Well, they are saying, one claim is that they existed before the park.
Before the national
park.
So
that is probably a true statement, because shrine can exist, and these any shrine. I mean, there are many Buddhist places of worship that existed and had people worshipping before national parks were declared. There are very few now that are in a continuous state of worship, or where people go to. There are many ancient sites within national parks. So this is a old site, a place of worship, but not abandoned. How continuously it was visited by devotees is very difficult to determine, because the war swept through this area, and during the war years people actually couldn't safely visit this area. But it's after the war that we see rapid expansion of the number of buildings at Pallenkandal, and a lot of clearing of the grass and scrub around the Pallenkandal church.
Isn't it a very sensitive issue? You are talking of religion, we have to respect all religions, but isn't it a sensitive issue?
But any religion and all religions need to respect the protected status that the state has given certain areas of the country and certain pieces of land. And a wilderness area that is protected as a national park has the highest level of protection of any wilderness area in the country, except for a strict nature reserve.
But how many people worship in this church?
Now, last July there was the festival, annual festival. 30,000 people are estimated to have visited Pallenkandal church. So in fact, for the 30,000 people, they had cleared maybe 4 to 5 acres of grassland
in
as a car park inside Vilpattu. This is all grazing land for elephants, so that is area denial for them. They lose out when people come in, and to accommodate those people, this grass is cleared. In fact, clearing of the grass, clearing of scrub, anything is completely illegal. It is against the Fauna and Flora Protection Ordinance. So the church has acted in contravention of that, which is in short breaking the law of the country with impunity, because there are no repercussions.
Haven't you discussed with the Cardinal? Haven't you had discussions?
No, we haven't gone for any discussions with him. We did, first thing for us to do is to write a letter and notify him and explain that this is happening and what our view is about this and our displeasure at this. And he has responded to us saying that this is, whatever is happening is, it's under the jurisdiction of the diocese of Chilau, and that different dioceses are independent of central authority, basically, that they are autonomous, and that he has little to do with it. He has little control or whatever. So we have also written to the Bishops' Conference, to the Papal Nuncio, through him to the Pope. And it is actually unfortunate, because this is a Pope who believes that the environment is important, that nature is important, that destroying nature ultimately will impact really badly on humans. He is someone who believes strongly in global warming and mitigating and reversing.
But is this the only problem we have? You know, there's other encroachment in Vilpattu. I mean, so many politicians are taking. There's so many things happening. Is this the only problem? No,
there is actually no other encroachment in Vilpattu except, well, there is the road, but which is now a Supreme Court case. WNPS, that's Wildlife and Nature Protection Society, together with Environmental Foundation Limited, together with another organization called Wilderness and Protected Areas Foundation, have gone to courts over that issue. And somehow the road and the church are linked, because it is this illegal road that has been cut through Vilpattu that gives easy access to this church. So they are using something that really shouldn't be there, which is basically a breach in Vilpattu's perimeter. This road goes through from the south to the north, from Eluvankulam to a place called Mollikulam, about 35 kilometer extent. Most people think it's the old Mana road, but the old Mana road was never improved. It couldn't be improved, so they cut a new road trace. And when 30,000 people access a church inside a national park, I don't need to really go into details to tell you what the impact is. And this is an area designated and set aside for the wildlife of Sri Lanka, for the protection of the fauna and flora, not for people to go, whether it's worship or any other business, for people to go in large numbers and adversely impact the area.
Rukshan, isn't wildlife and nature big business in Sri Lanka? We had Dr. Sumit Vilapitiya.
Yeah.
He had to resign, and he said he'll never return. What's happening to wildlife? Now, he said he could have made this really a good thing after Africa, to attract tourists. But what's happening? There is chaos everywhere.
I think the problem he ran up against is that, to some extent, I think Sumit would have been quite idealistic, but also he had to be somewhat realistic because he is also Sri Lankan, though he hadn't worked in the government sector. But then when he started working in the government sector, he realized what his limitations are. And I think, you know, if ministers are trying to micromanage and do what a government official should do and is competent to do and is capable of doing, and when you have a man with integrity coming into a position who's totally dedicated to what he's doing, he's not in there for the money, he's not in there for the position, he has other options, you have to let the man do his job. But if every time he tries to do something, he is told what he should do instead, or why do we need government officials? The ministers can run all the ministries and politicians can do all the bureaucratic jobs.
I think that's what's happening.
In a sense, that's what's happening. So these people are just there as yes men, as just figureheads, and ministers interfere at all levels.
Rukshan, I need to ask another question and then move on to other things, but you are a famous wildlife photographer, and were you at any given time influenced by your grandfather, President J.R. Jayawardena, to get involved in this, and what did he do for protection of wildlife and nature?
No, he was a firm believer that animals should be protected, and he liked animals and he liked nature, but he was not a man who had a great amount of time to go to national parks and spend time. It wasn't a specific interest of his like it is mine. I get my interest in nature from my mother as well and my father, but he was instrumental in bringing a blanket protection for all wildlife in Sri Lanka. At the time he was state minister in the 60s, and it is regulations passed by him that protects basically forms the core of the Fauna and Flora Protection Ordinance. Till that time, certain animals could be hunted seasonally. There were basically open seasons for hunting and closed seasons where they were protected. But this blanket protection throughout the year comes through in his time. So in a way, perhaps there is some inspiration from him, though there's, I mean, my interest in wildlife was
more from your father, you say?
From my father and my mother.
Yeah.
My mother is very interested in wilderness and wild places. She has went camping till quite recently, so she's quite an outdoor person. And my father is interested in wildlife and wildlife photography. So before I became a serious wildlife photographer, my father was taking serious wildlife photography.
But Rukshan, still you're talking of hunting, but still it continues. There's political patronage. What's happening? What can you tell our viewers on this?
Yeah, there is a lot of hunting that takes place for subsistence, you know, for the pot, as they say. But far more damaging is the commercialization of, you know, poaching or hunting wild animals in protected areas for consumption, commercial consumption. That is, the meat goes to small hotels, motels, even perhaps very big places in major urban centers, and there is a whole chain and network of people who hunt inside protected areas, people who buy the meat as middlemen and then supply end users or hotels who sell to end users.
You are saying, okay, network or a ring, but who is the godfather? Or there are many godfathers?
Until serious investigations are done and you go behind these people, you will not know whether there is one specific godfather or there are several patrons to this illegal system. Certainly local politicians are involved. Perhaps
you're
more
talking,
than
when you say local, the provincial?
Provincial politicians, no, but even national level politicians who's
representing those areas?
Exactly,
yeah.
Exactly. One in particular who is one in particular from Thanamalwila who didn't make it back into government under the scheme of taking people who were defeated back into government is notable. Yeah. Is involved. involved not just in the wild.
From which party is he? UNP or the UPFA?
UPFA. He is involved in the growing of ganja inside the national parks. He is involved in cattle rustling. He is involved in illegal poaching and benefit.
Have you complained? What's the police doing?
Police have never filed any charges against him. So short of an NGO taking out a case, for that we need evidence, we need to do background research. It needs people to come forward as witnesses. That's a very difficult thing. These are people who will kill people who will speak against them.
Has he threatened this politician? Has he threatened you all, your society and other people?
He has never threatened anybody in our society, but I have been witness to him threatening a wildlife department official, but it was a very interesting way he threatened. He said, you have to be very careful because you're a young man with good prospects and you serve in a very remote place and you never know what people might do.
So this politician, who's a former UPFA politician, he's lost, he couldn't enter through the national list, but he's still...
No. So he may be involved at some level.
Yeah.
I think much of his power is gone. So I'm really glad for it that some of these people who we don't need within our political hierarchy are out, and hopefully these people won't come back. But unfortunately several people who were discredited, who lost at the elections, are now back in positions of power and authority. And so as long as things like that happen, I don't see how any illegal network can be disrupted and successfully destroyed or prosecuted.
But now this is the Yahapalne government. Can't we address all this? And then also I want to remind you, in the Sinhala program, you mentioned about a company involved, got involved in encroachment. I think you should tell our English viewers also about it. What happened there?
No, I can mention the
company. You should mention
the case is over.
And
LOSC.
Yeah, but
Lanka,
who are the, what's the family? Like you said, a political family was involved?
Rajapaksa family, the most senior Rajapaksa was backing them.
Yes.
Probably gave them a green light to go ahead. So they signed a tripartite agreement with the Kerigoi Samitiya of the area and the forest department, who basically gave the land on a long-term lease, I think. But forest department cannot release land for any kind of opening up.
So they signed this tripartite agreement because of the involvement of the politician?
Because the backing.
The backing of the...
He was the godfather of the whole thing.
Yes.
So we think it was a land grab by other means. Gliricidia plantation was what was going to be put there for a dendro power project. The dendro power generating the generator or the factory was in Gampaha. So just think of the transport cost, fuel cost to take fuel wood from near Yala all the way to Gampaha. So they were putting the project forward as a green project, environment friendly, because they were going to use kind of renewable energy, basically growing green.
And you took them to courts?
We took them to courts, that is WNPS, EFL,
the Environmental Foundation
Limited, and a third organization, and the case was won.
By you all. Then what happened to this politician?
No, long before that, he had backed off from it. He was there in an unofficial capacity. His name did not appear anywhere, but we knew the kind of the arrogance,
clout and the power.
Arrogance and impunity with which LOLC acted, because they had the backing of this.
Which when you say Rajapaksa, who was who's
Chama? Sorry,
so they were
the name. Yes,
involved. So now that case is over.
They were involved. Till we went to courts, they had his support, but once we went to courts, he backed away from it.
Then Rukshan, you are saying the politicians are involved at all levels in destroying wildlife and nature?
No, I wouldn't say.
Are they backed and supported by officials and the henchmen?
No, I would say there is a lot of political involvement in the destruction of nature in this country. But I wouldn't say that all of them are. I'm sure there are wildlife friendly, environment friendly politicians. But many of those are not in positions of influence or power to effect change. The current Minister of Wildlife is, I think, at heart a good man who wants to do something worthwhile for wildlife, but in fact when he has an official who can do an excellent job, if he interferes in that man's work, then at the end of the day the job doesn't really get done.
They should walk the talk.
Yes, absolutely. And thing is, they often they think they know the job of everybody. They don't listen to experts, they don't take advice, and at the end of the day, there isn't something positive, that the outcome is not positive. And advisors that they have also are people who give them the wrong advice. Because
another thing, Rukshan, I want to ask now, see, Kataragama is the sacred city, but what's happening there?
Well, you can buy almost any game meat or wild meat in Kataragama, which is next door to Yala. It's a national park. Animals are not just protected inside protected areas, they are protected wherever they live. But in Sri Lanka, in many towns, in many cities, you can buy illegal meat, basically the meat of wild animals. So as long as that exists as a reality, how do we protect what is even inside our national parks and sanctuaries? We cannot.
But are the police aware of this network, and what's the police doing?
I think in some areas the police are active, some areas the police are complicit. They are beneficiaries of poaching and illegal hunting within national parks. And often police actually give ammunition or supply the means for some of these poachers to operate and protect them when they get into trouble. Or there may be just a sham arrest, but that is once again not everyone. There are very good officers who will prosecute, who will go after these poachers and these networks, but often when such an officer comes into a place like the Kataragama police or Tissamharam or somewhere where the poaching problem is quite intense, they don't last long in those posts. They are transferred out because they are stepping on too many toes. And
I think this is a good job for the plain-speaking new Inspector General of Police, Pujit Jayasundara. Have you had discussions with him?
No, in fact we haven't. Perhaps that's a very good idea. Perhaps we need to engage him and talk to him, and we can give him a lot of information, and we can give him insight into what is happening and also how to deal with it. Now, Kataragama is so bad that very recently they found once again dog meat being sold.
And this is our sacred city.
Yes, because dog meat is sold as deer meat, because the demand is so great, the supply is insufficient, so even dogs are killed to supply the demand. So there is also saying that when the buying stops, the killing will stop. So with wild animals and wild meat, game meat, or dadamas as they call it, that is very true. But how do you stop the buying? Unless you go after the people who are selling, you can't stop the, you can do education and educate people and children to stop, consuming what is wild meat, even if their parents do, but that is long term. How much time do we have to protect what is our natural weight? I'm not quite sure. So
but what about your society? Can't you go and campaign in the area? Will you all be under threat if you try to campaign in Kataragama?
No, we can campaign in Kataragama. I mean, threats will come and threats will go, but I think people who do illegal things in the country to some extent have also a lot to fear. So they can threaten, but if they carry out their threats, there is also, it's not for a, you can't say that there will be no consequences. But if you're in conservation, you can't be a serious conservationist if you're going to take a step back and silence yourself at the first threat or at the first hint of danger. So
how did you reach out to the school children to educate them? I think you should have a very intense campaign, Rukshan. This is what I feel. Then if you create more awareness, they will stand up against this.
Yeah, I think it's very important to educate the young generation about what is wrong that the adults do, and what is valuable and worthwhile about the natural wealth of Sri Lanka and how to protect it. But once again, Bandula, that is long term. It has to be two-pronged. There have to be laws that are there, that are good laws implemented. We need to actively kind of
campaign
actively prosecute those who are involved in the illegal wildlife trade. We need to find who the kingpins are. We need to implement the Fauna and Flora Protection Ordinance, which is, the implementation is legal. Police have a role and the judiciary has a role, and wherever fines are inadequate, fines have to be increased. And
what are the fines like?
What are the fines like? Often a few hundred rupees, at most a few thousand rupees. Some fines have been increased, but some fines still remain quite archaic, not commensurate with what they are earning from the illegal trade. So for them to pay that fine and just go back to doing what they were doing, the illegal activity, is nothing. So it must hurt, it must disrupt. And I think jail terms are actually important, because jail terms shouldn't only happen because a man kills another man. If a man kills a protected species, a man kills something that the state has laws to protect, then he should also be facing a jail term.
State got laws, but it's the very state, the politicians of that state are protecting these people.
Absolutely, they intervene with the police. If the police is trying to do a good job, sometimes they put pressure on the police, they release that man. Hey, Magem in here, you have no right to detain him. You don't frame charges against him. Or once he gets in, if he has to face a court case, they will supply some kind of legal assistance to the man. Often the wildlife department doesn't have a good enough legal team or legal assistance when a game ranger shoots a man, even in self-defense in a national park. He is trying to defend himself, that why he had a right to use his official firearm in defense of his own life. It's like if a man shoots another man on the street, then he is accused of a crime. These people doing their official duty also are treated like criminals. So how do we ever stop what is happening inside our national parks that is illegal?
So this is a very bad state of affairs.
It is very bad. I mean, we can put a nice gloss over it and say, Sri Lanka is a great destination for wildlife tourism, to see leopards, to see elephants, to see sloth bears, to see birds. But the reality is, we don't protect what is ours.
I remember a movie during our school days. There's a movie which came, Let Them Live. I think I remember, I don't know if you've seen that.
Yes.
So continue, sir.
Yeah, so the thing is, if we don't protect our wildlife resources properly, we can't expect to have a long-term wildlife tourism industry or nature tourism. But while we constantly talk about nature tourism, constantly put programs in place and money in place, we build more hotels, we market our wildlife abroad, but we don't do the basics. We don't have adequate protection, we don't have proper systems in place to protect our wildlife, we don't back the protectors, we don't pay them adequately, we don't incentivize them properly, we don't reward them for doing the job.
Thank you very much, Rukshan. Now you heard from Rukshan Javardhana what's happening in incredible Sri Lanka. Thank you very much for joining us. Faraz Shaukat will be back tomorrow morning. Have a nice day.
Thank you, Bandhu.
News First, Newsline with Faraz Shaukat.